Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying this week's video so far. It's been kind of a quiet one for a couple of days, which you probably noticed, but that kind of leads directly into the question that I want to answer in today's video. So it was given to me on Patreon as a two-part question, but I'm going to focus on the second half. The full question is, as an autistic freelance illustrator who works from home, how do you plan when you start and finish work every day? And then the second half that I want to focus on is, how do you find adjusting this when things are feeling overwhelming in your day/life, or when you aren't as able to work like you usually do? And I'll revisit the first half in a different video, but for this video I think the second half is really fitting. And I think my answer is going to be quite reminiscent of my answer last week. Oh, and the question was from Louis on Patreon. I hope I said that correctly. Thank you, Louis, for your question. And by reminiscent of last week, I mean in the way that my primary piece of advice was just to be patient with yourself. And for tackling low energy days or weeks, it's the same thing, really. This week, I tapered off around Wednesday. I woke up on Wednesday morning and I was really tired and I didn't really have the energy that I was expecting to. This doesn't always correlate to having busy days beforehand. Sometimes I just wake up and I don't have the spoons that I thought it would. And sometimes it doesn't just last for one day, but a couple of days or a few days or maybe a week or more. I'm not really sure why being autistic is like that, but it just is sometimes. Sometimes it is literally just like that. You wake up and you have no energy and you don't know why. And you just have to rest and wait for the day that you wake up with energy again. It's not ideal, but it's also a big part of why I chose to be a freelancer after I graduated university. If I'm being real, even just keeping up with my university course was exhausting. And I had a system worked out with my main tutor where I could come in and explain where I was at with my work, and then if I needed to, I could go home and keep working from there, and then update him again the following day, because being in the studio was so exhausting for me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure why it's like that, but it is sometimes. And I woke up on Wednesday this week and I was knackered, wasn't sure why. And I rested to prioritize my energy for the evening. And then I woke up on Thursday and I was still tired. And I was like, well, you know, the cinema can be draining, so that's okay. I'll take it easy again. And then I woke up this morning. And normally, obviously, by this point, I'd be hoping to have more energy again. And I didn't really. I've done a bit, but I haven't done masses, and that's okay. And I think that's what I mean about patience, is that when you first get diagnosed, it's really exciting and you think, oh, I finally have answers, it's going to fix everything. And then eventually, sometime later, maybe immediately, maybe, you know, a couple of months or a year later, maybe even a couple of years later, you realize, well, okay, I'm autistic and that's still actually a disability. And as exciting as it is to have answers, I am disabled, and I feel that. Some days more than others, especially in regards to my energy levels and my fatigue. Some days you just can't do it, and there's no point being at war with yourself about it. That's how you end up in looping cycles of burnout. So on days where I wake up multiple days in a row even, and I don't have the energy, I am just nice to myself. I'm just patient. I just think, okay, what needs doing immediately, and I'll prioritize those things. And normally for me, that's like walking Wednesday. I'll walk my dog because that's important for her health. So I'll do that. And if that takes up all my spoons for the day, then I just think fine, but at least she's okay. And if some days I can't walk her because I'm too tired for that, then I focus on enrichment activities instead. And we do other tiring stuff inside, like training or sniffing activities, that kind of thing. I normally try to prioritize some emails if they're urgent, but otherwise I redirect. I forget my to-do list and I leave it all for the following day or the day after that or the day after that. And I just try to do inside things that are still creative and maybe inspiring, but are ultimately not very physically or mentally demanding. And those activities might look different for different people. But for me, that's focusing on things like reading, watching films, listening to music, documentaries, maybe making some notes about things I want to do in the future, but with very little stress. Playing video games, because I think that can be really inspiring if you're a creative person, and even if you're not, like if you're tired and you can't focus, it's important to remember that the focus will eventually come back. But for the time being, just rest and play. Like, rest and play are such important things for the human experience and well-being that I think aren't talked about anywhere near enough, especially in the current atmosphere. And when you're disabled or autistic or both, I think it's easy to forget that you are disabled. Like, there's so much focus on other parts of being autistic, and when you live with the reality of it, there's no point being angry about your energy levels or trying to force yourself to do things. I spent most of my life burnt out and not knowing that I was burnt out, and it did nothing but almost kill me on multiple occasions. And I think now that I'm older, I'm 25, I just think I'm a bit done with that, with forcing myself. And I grew up being told that I was lazy and apathetic and I didn't try hard enough, and that I had potential but never reached it. And now I just think, well, I don't care what kind of production I live up to. Like, I just want to make the stuff I want to make, and when I'm not feeling well, I'll rest and I'll come back to it. And ultimately the world is not very kind to that kind of attitude, but I think when you're autistic or when you have issues with your energy levels and those kinds of things, it's just, you don't really have a choice anyway. Like, you can force yourself, but then what's the result going to be? Like, you're going to be worse off than when you started. And I know for a lot of people it's not as simple as that. But I'm privileged and lucky to be living with my dad at the moment, and I think while I have that, I will let myself rest. My main focuses in life right now are trying desperately to save money, which, if you've seen anything about the cost of living crisis approaching the UK, or rather rapidly slamming the UK in the face, that's not going as well as I would like it to be. But ultimately my focuses are on trying to save money and keeping my dog fed and slowly growing my business. And I'm trying really hard to do those things, but not at the cost of my whole well-being. A big part of why I moved to Reading in the first place was to reprioritize my well-being. And I don't want to jeopardize that at the moment. And I am lucky to be living with my dad because I know that if I miss a day of work, I'm still going to eat. And that is a privilege, especially one that a lot of people in the UK currently might not have. And I just wanted to acknowledge that because I don't want to sound tone deaf or oversimplify situations. But at the moment, especially this year, I think my priority is on my well-being and on trying to maintain some of the energy and motivation that I haven't had for so long and that I am now just about starting to have back. And that includes things like making videos and trying to grow my business and resting. And yeah, so on the days when I can't do everything, I just don't. I no longer do that. Like, I no longer try to do everything. I just rest and I do other activities, even if those activities aren't considered productive by society. I just let myself rest and I come back to it and I try to do what I can where I can. But I'm tired of sacrificing my health and well-being for so little give back, if that makes sense. I've never really appreciated the idea of working yourself to the bone for little reward. Even as a child, it just didn't make sense to me. And it still doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why living contently and people being able to do that is not the priority of the world. Like, I get it, but I don't, you know? So on the days that I can't, I just don't. And, you know, it feels better. And it's a big topic. I can't cover it all. It's so complex. And I'm not going to try and sit here and pretend that I'm well-versed enough to cover every aspect of what I'm talking about. But for me personally, at the moment, in the position that I'm in, I just rest. And I hope that you guys are able to rest when you can as well, because I don't think enough emphasis is put on the importance of it.